My name's Paul Sinclair and I'd like to introduce you today to a series of videos highlighting my research into unexplained phenomena around East and North Yorkshire. If you like what you see, please subscribe to this YouTube channel or find our Truth Proof page on Facebook. I've recently started researching for the fourth book and already I've been given some quite amazing accounts. And there's two in particular that interest me, from a farmer in Flixton. I will not say his name at this time. I don't know whether I'll be using his real name when I come to write about him, but already I'm sort of excited, sounds a bit sad, but already I'm really interested in what this guy's got to tell me. First of all, he approached me via email and he's got quite a few stories. I think he said his family is 4 generations in Flixton. Interestingly, he's never heard of the Flixton Werewolf, and I've no qualms in saying that, despite me speaking to numerous people that from the area that have. But his stories are nevertheless really, really good. One of them, the first one, is I'm not sure of his age at the time, but we're going back to 2002. And he said he'd been on a night out in Scarborough, but he had quickly stressed to me that he hadn't been drinking. And he came to Spittal Corner, which is the roundabout sort of famous where one of the sightings of the Flixton Werewolf was. He's just describing the layout of the land and drove on towards Flixton village, where he says you will encounter bungalows, he says, and then an area of land, open fields looking down onto the Flixton cars. He said, and there was a moon out, and you could see the moon. He says, but on the cars, very low, and perhaps we ought to discuss what the cars are. That's the area of wetland, because I realise some people might not actually be in tune with what we're talking about. They actually called the cars, and it means reeds and elder. He says, on the cars, he sees an object like the moon, as big as the full moon, off the ground, but lower than the surrounding lands, and in the distance you can see Oliver's Mount at Scarborough, which is the highest point of land around, which is about 500 feet above sea level. And he's watching this thing in the time it takes to, when he's left the bungalows before he reaches the next part of the village, quite amazed by what he sees, and reaches the farmhouse, pulls in, he says, and as he opens the car door, an overwhelming wave of fear envelops him. He says, absolute sheer terror. He said, I literally shut the car, locked it, and ran to the farmhouse door, opened the door, went inside, locked it. He said, soon as I'd gone inside, I forgot all about what I'd just seen, all about the fear. He said, but the next day, the next morning, I remembered. Now this has always perplexed him, it's always intrigued him, and it's one aspect I will be writing about in new book, this feeling people are getting, this fear that they're getting imposed upon them by these objects. And he had one more quite interesting story to tell me, and I'm sure there's more, but this one you're going to find as bizarre as anything you're going to hear. It says he was about 10 years old at the time. You know, he could have been 9, he could have been 11. He believes he were about 10. His sister was 2 or 3 years older than him, or 3 years older, let me get my facts right, 3 years older than him. He said, on this particular night, he's in bed in the farmhouse, and he woke up in the night and for some reason found himself walking to the window of his bedroom window, and he looked down the drive. And as he's looking down the drive, he sees 5 dwarves abreast, walking up the farmyard towards the house. He said they looked like something from, in dress like Lord of the Rings. They're really strange. And he said they were dwarves. He says, fear just overcome me. I jumped in bed, pulled the covers over my head and went to sleep. He says, and the next morning I remembered about it and I thought, this was a weird dream. He says, you know, I mean, I don't know how he would have thought as a 10-year-old boy, but that's what these words are relayed to me. He said, and I wouldn't have thought any more about this. He said, but we sat at the table having breakfast and my sister went, I had the strangest dream last night. And Dad asked what the dream was. He says, well, I dreamt that I woke up in my bedroom and there was dwarves all inside the bedroom. Now, I find that story quite incredible. I mean, some people might just go, oh, you know, what a load of rubbish, or we don't believe that. But when you've got people with nothing else to gain but ridicule telling you these things, I think we've got to attach a bit of truth to them. And we're not far from all these areas where similar things have been seen. I mean, we've got Elf Howe, a short distance up from this farmhouse at Flixton. And the same guy I asked when we were talking about the Flixton Werewolf told me that at the top of Flixton Brow, there's a house now built there, but there used to be an old farmhouse. And he doesn't know whether this was connected to the werewolf or the stories of the werewolf, but he said that it was known as Black Farm, and it was known by locals and people in the area that something dark and sinister lived around the area of Black Farm. Now, I know we can't just jump and say this is connected to the werewolf, the stories of the Flixton Werewolf, but I still find this really interesting. So that's just the first two stories that are going to be in Truth Proof 4. This story that this chap's given me, this farmer from Flixton, the one from childhood and the one when he was a young man, they're not unique to area. There's lots and lots of more stories come out which I wrote about in the first book. And we have to ask ourselves, you know, why is one particular area being attributed to these kind of things? Is it the location? Is everybody prone to fantasy? This man is not, as previously said, has not even got any knowledge, or his family haven't, of this thing that people are calling the Flixton Werewolf. But enough people have in the village to make me believe that it's real. You know, on Spittal Corner, there's the young lady who claimed whilst travelling home from York, I think it was in 2014, with her husband and two children in back at car. She said as they're approaching the roundabout in their car, she saw what was she described as a huge dog sideways on, crouched down on the roundabout. She said it was a bit of a jaw-dropping moment. She asked her husband to stop the car when they were heading to Caton, that's where they live. And she said, I've just seen something really strange. Lock the doors, go back round the roundabout. Immediately they went back round, there's nothing there. Her husband has given her lots of ridicule about this, and this is the reason I think that most of the people who see these things will not talk about it. It's a sort of disrespecting the actual witness who claims what they have seen to be real. But the stories go back absolutely decades and decades, and probably back even further, at hundreds of years. This is a story I've been told. Obviously he's not in a position to tell me no more. I think it's about 1934 on the Flixton cars and Caton cars. A farmer, now elderly, used to work for another farmer called Jimmy Keith, the real name. And Jimmy Keith is not claimed to fame, that would be a wrong thing to say, but he was quite keen on telling people that he'd seen this biped, upright dog-looking creature on the cars. And if anybody who's ever looked at it from Google Earth or visited the area will know that there's huge land drains that sort of network this area. I'm not saying anything could live and probably avoid detection, but there's plenty of places to hide. I think everybody knows my views on this, and I do believe that there's some kind of interdimensional aspect to these things. Doesn't mean I'm right. Some people believe that we've got living, breathing apex predators here in the UK and in other countries in the world. I don't believe it at all. I think we'd be seeing carnage. But I just think it's like we're on Radio 1 and these things are on Radio 2, and occasionally in certain areas, such as Flixton, such as Bempton, these things can slip through.
Please subscribe to this channel by clicking the icon. Click on the notification bell to get notification of future videos.